Mandatory. Listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humans of all ages, we are back with episode 10 of Mandatory Listening. You know what I think we need to do? We made it to 10. You know what I think we need to celebrate this episode now. Like we haven't done that yet, so far.
Yeah.
We don't have this little talk every time afterwards.
Right.
No, what I think we should do? I think you should give the folks like a Dan's 10-second overview of what this podcast is about. You know what I mean? Like, we're starting to get our bearings. You know what I'm saying? We kind of know what the flow.
Right.
We're cutting things out, trimming the fat.
Got the bearings,
so
trimming the
speak,
fat. Yep. Yeah. Dan's 10-second overview. That is a tough call.
Yeah. Do you need a 10-second time to think about it, or?
Yeah, I'll be right back. Yeah, there's for me to say anything in 10 seconds is pretty hard. Okay, so
and that's it, folks.
Right, yeah. And time's up. Okay, so my 10 seconds would be this podcast is about music that you need to listen to, whether or not you have heard of it before, brought to you by me and Aaron.
Yeah, man. We're not the experts, but we're listening to it. We're going to do this thing with you. So
we're on the journey with you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on the journey with you. I feel like this is like the best experience is, what we do at the end of every podcast, we do this thing called Next Album. That's not a thing. It's just a segment.
Ooh.
Yeah, we do this thing called
a lot of creative meetings went into that.
But what I think the best way to experience this podcast is to listen to the album before, but also really listen to the album we're going to next.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So listen to it throughout the week, because that's what we're doing. We're listening to it throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the next episode comes, then get on board, be like, oh yeah, I knew. Oh, okay, I noticed what he's talking about when you hear this or when you hear that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is we're trying to build the mandatory listening tribe, organically. We haven't hit up our folks up at Sony Records or anything to put out any
Yeah, it's not even on any podcast platform yet. It's just on YouTube.
It's just on YouTube. So you could, but look, we appreciate you guys. We see you in the comments. Shout out to Tony. Shout out to
my dad.
Terry. Shout out to who else? Will Gaddis.
Will Gaddis, yeah. My friend Sean.
Shout out to Sean.
Joey Santoro, I think.
Yeah, Joey, my parent. People are in the tribe, right?
Yeah.
We just named all of our friends. No. Also, if you want, we should start putting the links to our mandatory listening in the description.
Yeah.
Because we each have a playlist of the songs that we liked from each album, and so it's getting pretty big so far.
Yeah, and I need to update mine. I think I have episodes 1 through 6 in there right now, so I need to finish it out. But at least the way I'm doing it is 1 through 10, and then 11 through 20, 10 episodes at a time. Because otherwise, it would just be way too big. So
that's actually good. Okay, you know what? There's a lot of cool things we're adding. We'll talk about the new thing that we're doing for episode 10.
Yeah.
Or episode
11. Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do these in 10 episode increments. So
So
I'm excited. You know what else I'm excited about?
What's that?
That today we're going over I know we've disputed before, but this is an undisputed. Nobody can tell us different. I don't care. Questlove, come at me. Classic.
Elton John, come.
What's the album we're talking about today, Dan?
This is the undisputed classic, "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye.
Coming in at 247 pounds, 6'3". Undisputed. The undisputed.
That's why I'm not a boxer. That stance right there was pretty. The right one. Like you said, undisputed classic. Came out May 21st, 1971. And connecting it from the last album, which was There's a Riot Going On, Sly and the Family Stone.
Yep.
That came out just a few months after this one. So we kind of came back a few months. Also, the connection was that the title of Sly's album was basically a response to the title of this album.
Exactly.
What's Going On? There's a Riot Going On.
these are all reasons why you guys have to be listening to the podcast, listening to the old albums, so you can connect. These things are connected, man. It's not. We're not just doing this willy nilly. You know what I'm saying?
Willy nilly. Yeah.
There's a structure to this.
This isn't willy nilly listening. I mean, this is mandatory listening.
Mandatory listening. Get your stuff together. All right. So, what's going on? 1971, Marvin Gaye. What do you know about it before you listen this week?
So I actually did know this whole album. I think this is the first one.
When you say no, what do you mean? No.
Like I had listened to this album from front to back multiple times.
Okay. Gotcha.
I had never spent like a week with it or something.
Yeah.
As structured as we do, but this was the first time that I knew going into it that I had definitely listened to the whole album before.
Right. Yeah. With confidence.
Yeah. And even I would say like within this quarantine time, like within the last few months, I had sat down and listened to the whole thing. So like it had been pretty recently as well. So
why?
I was doing a listening session with my friend Sean, and
now we're getting on the listening sessions without me, huh? Didn't even tell me you're gonna change listening sessions.
They're not the same over Zoom, man. Unfortunately, it's like, oh, what was that? I can't quite hear that.
Yeah, looks like you're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming in and out. Yeah. So we did a listening session one night, and we actually listened to Sly too that night. Now I think about it, but anyway, yeah, this album was one that we listened to. So that was probably just a couple months ago.
Incredibly surprising that I had never listened. I had never listened to this album at all.
Wow. Yeah, I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind too. I listened to What's Going On. Obviously, I know that song. Well, not obviously. I knew that song. Played it a lot. That's like one of those like pseudo jazz standards now.
Yeah, right.
It's like let's play What's Going On. When we want to play something with a backbeat.
That's what you play in like the second or third hour of your restaurant trio set when you're just sick and tired of playing like actual jazz standards, and you just want to groove.
Yeah. Something with a backbeat.
I feel like I have to shout out the Bistro in Knoxville, Tennessee, because that's what I'm thinking of. Like those Friday nights that I would play with the Daniel Ryan trio, and like it'd be like me and Sam and Adrian, or me and Sam and Nathan Dominy, and we would be like, definitely grooving. Like by the end of it, because I was tired of playing jazz standards.
Yeah, all the waitresses and waiters are like, "Yeah, man, wow, you guys are so cool, love it."
Yeah, I like your version of jazz. It's like,
do you want the $64 burger?
Yeah, so I was surprised to hear that you hadn't heard it, but like,
I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, but I mean it happens all the time. Like I would say there's been multiple albums through the past 10 episodes that I've been like, man, I haven't really like spent time with this. So again, we say it all the time. That's one of the best things about doing this podcast in the structure for us, like for you guys too as listeners, but also just for us.
Here's another question. What do you know about Marvin Gaye before you listen to this, or before you do any research this week?
I'm glad you asked that. So not very much outside of this album. I knew a couple of the hits, like I heard it through the grapevine. Let's Get It On, like a couple songs, and then this album, and I knew that he died pretty young.
Yeah. Did you know how he died?
When I read it again this week, I remembered reading it before, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you.
I had no idea. Totally caught me by. Yeah, I knew he died young because he's like the first person that I remember black people, like black women, would be like, "I saw Marvin Gaye at the mall." Like, like I remember
like he's not actually dead.
Like he's not actually dead. Like I would like that was the first person I ever heard like that about.
I will say this too about Marvin Gaye is I would have thought that I was remembering that he died like pretty shortly after this album, but that's not true. It was like
it was like 12 years.
Yeah. He still had quite a bit left after this. What did you know about Marvin Gaye going into it?
Wow, thank you so much for asking.
I wanted to reciprocate the question.
I didn't know that much. I knew that he was a sex symbol. I knew that he was a part of Motown. I knew that he made What's Going On, and that's about it.
And
I knew that. So I thought that him and Tammy Terrell were married, or at least in a relationship. I didn't. That actually is not true. I knew he was really, really sad when she died. And that's kind of all I kind of knew. Like, I didn't really know that much about him.
You were mentioning Tammy Terrell and the fact that they were, singing partners, good friends. So that was a big part of Marvin kind of going into this very deep depression in the late 60s was the fact that she got diagnosed with this brain tumor.
Right.
And we'll get to even more things that were going on in his life that contributed to his depression. But
yeah,
she was, speaking of young, she was only 24 when she died in early 1970. And so that was going straight into the kind of time period where Marvin was starting to work on this album.
Right. For those of you that may not be familiar with Tammy Terrell, just that name, there's the most probably popular song that she was a part of was "Ain't No Mountain High, Ain't No Valley Low, Ain't No River Wide Enough, Baby." That song right there. And then she goes, "If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how." And then Marvin goes, "Listen, baby." Like that's basically the whole first verse. Really.
Yeah, that was great.
If anybody needs a remix, just let me know. In 3 different keys.
Yeah, he'll cover Tammy's parts, Marvin's parts.
Yeah.
He'll beatbox the rest.
Out of respect.
Pentatonix version, Aaron style.
Yeah, but that's her. She sang "Do It With Him." They were kind of like a, like in the 60s, Motown was very clean. And the reason I'll say this because it kind of relates to what's going on. They were like very clean. They're like charm school. Like they literally went through charm school, basically, like finishing school. Some people call it, where it's like they would, don't talk about this in an interview. Don't say this. Dress this way. Dance this way. Have this little dance routine. Like, okay, the way we make songs is going to be like this. We're not going to make it any other way. It's going to be just like this. And the musicians are going to play exactly like this, and everything was very. It was like a factory, like a manufacturing thing, and that's where Barry came from with his work. And so, like, he kind of just brought that idea over to Motown.
And that's kind of like a precedent for like all the Disney stars, like later on,
I never even thought about that.
Kind of that like, oh well, it's gonna be this way, and you're gonna do this and say this and dress this way, and all like it's all very
you're
like.
Not gonna release any type of weird record. No, we're gonna release exactly what.
And you're gonna have your own show, and it's like
yeah. You're gonna have this couple. Like, how about Marvin? You're an attractive guy. All the girls like you. And here's Tammy. She's a young, attractive girl. We're gonna put you guys as a duo. Y'all gonna sing a bunch of songs together. Y'all go on tour together. All that type of stuff. So that's why they were so close. Marvin Gaye was actually in a relationship with Berry Gordy's sister.
Yes, Anna Gordy. Yep.
Anna Gordy. So,
and they got married in 1963, I believe.
Yeah, he was like maybe like 23 or 24. She was like 40 something or like 39. I'm like, that's like the.
Oh wow, I didn't know she was that much older than him.
Yeah, she was like way older than him, which was why it was kind of like, what's happening? But but it was like one of those things, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, we skipped a lot of things that you guys can check out. But just very interesting things that we won't even really get to because this album doesn't have anything to do with his death. But he had a very tumultuous relationship with his dad. His dad was a minister, a preacher, a pastor in a very small denomination of a Baptist church. And although that is a through line with some of the other Black artists from this time period, it definitely served as a kind of catalyst for a lot of his issues in his life, or at least that's how he kind of explains it. His dad was very like, you're doing devil's work if you're singing this music, or really if you're doing anything other than I say, basically. But on the flip side, his dad was a cross-dresser.
Really?
Yeah. So he was, on one side, he was this really disciplinarian, follow the Bible, every single word. But then he would like regularly cross-dress, and nobody really talked about it. And so Marvin always kind of had this like, as a child, you're like, wait, I don't really understand. You know what I'm saying? And so that kind of just kept going throughout throughout his life until eventually his tragic death when his father shoots him.
Yeah, that's I didn't know any of that about his father, other than that he was the one who ended up killing him. And I have to think that even though that did happen like 10 to 12 years later after this album came out, the relationship between the two like still had to have been affecting him in conscious or subconscious ways, like in addition to all the other things that were happening in his life, like maybe even caused some of the things like struggles with cocaine and stuff like that. So it all ties together.
I think that one documentary I was watching, they were just saying that he always was kind of like to either extreme. Either he was like all the way into like cocaine and sort of like drug life, like party life. Well, not really party, but just like these things that are like negatively pulling him, or he was like all the way into like being religious and being on God's side, as they say.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing to say is that during this album he got honored. I think it was at the Kennedy Center. That was like one of the only times his parents came, and that was one of the only times his dad was like really proud of him and vocally said that.
When was that?
If I'm not mistaken, I'm going off of memory from like watching things, but that was like during this time, like after the album had been released, after it had been critically acclaimed, that type of, it had received so many accolades. He was honored at the Kennedy Center. He brought his parents, and his dad told him he was proud of him.
It's interesting too, like because this was his 11th studio album. We've seen that multiple times on this podcast. But the difference to me with Marvin is that he did have like I think a pretty good amount of success before this album. Like this wasn't this wasn't really his like introducing the world to Marvin Gaye.
No. No, it wasn't at all. In fact, some could say it was like a rebranding. Like a re-imaging of Marvin.
And there's a lot of parallels to Sly Stone and like kind of the turmoil in their lives that led to their albums sounding the way they did, and the way their earlier albums sounded before that.
It's kind of like different expressions of that same sentiment. Like obviously this album sounds nothing like There's a Riot Going.
Oh right, yeah, of course.
But I know what you're like. I know exactly what you're saying, and like, I totally agree.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I'll kind of say a couple other things about what was going on in Marvin's life, but like being in a very dark place and creating out of that instead of maybe being forced or highly encouraged to not write stuff out of a dark place. Like let's make songs about like love that works, like relationships that work, and like childhood, and like
or like breakups, anything, like even like you're not, you're like sad. It's not a dark place. It's like
it's like I'm sad, but I'll be
she doesn't
happy.
like you anymore. You'll get over it.
So like the stuff with Tammy Terrell and like knowing what he knew about her, which I don't think everything was probably public. At the time that she was dealing with what she was dealing with, but she had tumultuous. That's a tough one.
And he's out of there.
I need
one more, and he's gonna be out of there. They might need to get him.
Oh boy, he's behind in the count. It's a rough day for old Dan.
The funny thing is, I know nothing about baseball, so I don't even know how to commentate it. I'm just like, I don't know. They might get some help in there. I'm like, wait,
I don't know. They might give him a 10-yard penalty. How does that work? So she had tumultuous. I gotta stop saying that word. Wow, strike three. All right. She had troubling relationships with multiple people, including James Brown. And
she did?
Yeah. Yeah, she was in this abusive relationship with James Brown, and like it was pretty bad for her, needless to say. But and that happened again with, I can't remember now. I don't want to guess. It was another like Motown artist.
That's a bad thing to guess.
Yeah. I think it was so and so. Yeah, but it was one of them was for sure James Brown. And anyway,
yeah,
I think what he knew about that with her, and then the fact that she has brain cancer, dies so young, they were so close. Brain tumors, yeah. And you combine that with his marriage to Anna was not over, but it was like deteriorating. And I don't know many details about this, but just like he had struggles with the IRS, and he was having business relationship strains with Motown Records. So this was all happening like around the same time, like late 60s going into 1970 and 1971 when it was finished recording. But I mean, that is one of those things will put you in a dark place, emotionally and mentally and musically. And so to have all of that happening, and then to ultimately come out with this like really beautiful album, is that's one of my favorite things about it. It's like, I hate to be like cliche, but it's very much like a diamond, like it's like a diamond coming out of the rough.
Doesn't really get talked about much is that he was actually in the military early on, before he became a Motown artist or signed artist. So he kind of has like his history with the Army. He was like honorably discharged. Then basically, I think he was honorably discharged, or maybe it was dishonorably discharged. I can't remember, but
I bet you it was one of the two.
But I think that like they were. In other words, they were really glad to have him leave. So he already kind of had a negative relationship with the war. And then what we'll see in the next section is that, or the next segment, is that he finds out a lot of interesting things from his brother that sort of initiate, that sort of become the impetus for the next album. Oh man, we're cooking now, Dan. Like I didn't even pull out the impetus.
And the tumultuous. No, I'm just kidding. And his brother was a soldier in Vietnam, correct?
Yeah. Before we talk about the brother, let's talk about this. There was a guy.
There was once a man.
There was once a man named well, his nickname was Obi, and his last name was Benson, and he was a part of this this group called the Four Tops. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yes.
There's a very integral part of the Motown story. Their group, and he was actually in San Francisco one time, and I think it was actually '69, and he basically sees like police beating on these kids.
It was in Berkeley, California in 1969, I believe. Yeah,
it's kind of like known as Bloody Thursday. So he kind of witnessed this, and he kind of came up with the initial ideas for the song, what's going on, because he was kind of asking these questions to himself. He's kind of had these like, it's kind of like this revelatory moment that is kind of interesting, because it's kind of what's happening to a lot of people in the last few months in 2020.
Yeah,
he's just asking like what's happening here, like what's going on, and the quotes are like, why are they sending so many kids far away from their families, so on and so forth. So these are like the kind of questions that he started asking himself. Then he brought that song, that idea, to Al Cleveland, who was another writer at Motown, pitched it to his friends, the rest of the Four Tops, and they were like, man, this is a protest song, we don't want to do that, that's jive. I'm sorry, I don't know if they I'm sorry.
That's jive.
Basically, he brings the tune to Al. Al says, yeah, I'm gonna help you write it. They pitched it to some other writers. They were like, nah, we don't want that. Other writers and other singers at Motown were like, nah. I think Joanne, what's her name? Joanne something.
Joanne M.
I don't want to be so disrespectful. Joanne M. And then eventually she was like, no. Then he brings it to Marvin. Marvin was like, love that. I love being a rebel. I love being against the system. And he's like, it would be perfect for this group that I have called the Originals. And then Obi was like, I wasn't really feeling that. That's kind of jive.
That's kind of jive.
I don't even know what jive means.
It's like whack or like.
He's like Marv, that's jive. I think that you should do it. So he basically says, yo, I'll give you percentage of the song if you do it yourself. If you get anybody else to do it that's not you, I'm not going to give you anything on it. And so Marvin was like, all right, got you. So he did it kind of himself. He tracked the song, and then he got really excited. He was like, yo, this is really nice. Like, I killed it. So he was like, hey, let me go get Barry Gordy. So he hits up Barry Gordy, who's on vacation. He says, hey, Barry, I got a classic. He's like, they're going to revere this album for the rest of my life. It's going to connect with people in 2014, in 2020. It's going to connect with people in 1990, 1992. It's going to be a world changer. And Barry was like, hey, man, why do you want to ruin your career?
Yeah, he hated it. He hated this song. Yeah. Which, that's so interesting. But
I mean, it kind of matches with how everything else, like Barry didn't seem like a guy that was like ultimately was in it for the art. I don't know this, like Barry, like I'm like, Barry, like hit us up, hit us in the comments and tell us that you were definitely in it for the art. But he seemed like he was more of like a businessman / like he really did like the culture, but he was like building something, and anything outside of what he was seeing, he wasn't seeing. So this definitely wasn't, especially for someone like Marvin and Stevie Wonder, who were basically his, top two moneymakers at the time. In addition to Diana Ross, who was also doing had a movie career. So he's like, look, I'm focused on getting Diana Ross popping. I don't really have time to figure out all y'all stuff over here in Detroit. I'm in California. So I know I talked a lot. Tell me what your thoughts are about that.
So a couple things. One would be, I thought it was interesting that when he brought it to Marvin, when Benson brought it to Marvin, Marvin was, and you kind of said this, but he was like, I'm gonna, can we agree that I'm gonna like do my own kind of version of it, which it ended up meaning like changing stuff. Like he changed like the melody and the lyrics and like to reflect his own thoughts on the subject, but it is important to do it from the beginning, like explain it from the beginning like you did, and like there was an eyewitness account of police brutality that Benson was there for.
Yeah, and it just becomes the overarching theme of the whole project. Like can you talk about, I don't know if did you find any information about when his brother comes back from Vietnam? Like, because like you said that he trying to change the subject matter, and I think that's one of the things that kind of helped him to do that.
Yeah, so I don't know a ton, but I know that his brother was a soldier in Vietnam, and they were like writing letters back and forth to each other while his brother was over there, and he was getting obviously direct accounts of like what it was like during the war, but then also maybe even more specifically for the influence of this album, like his brother was talking about what it was like to come back after being over there, after fighting for, basically fighting for the U.S. and coming back to the U.S. and seeing just more unrest and more like, basically just Black people getting treated poorly, like if you say it exactly how it is.
For sure.
And that how much that affected.
Also the war too.
Also the war, all of that together, just like if he was just having problems with the IRS and he was trying to make an album, like that would be tough. But everything was happening at once. Same thing here is like not only was there a war, but there were plenty of problems at home too. So
for sure.
Like all of that was just combining, and then that like you said, that was kind of the main change from Benson's original and what was the name of the songwriter? Al Cleveland, like
Al
his
Cleveland,
his original version of the song.
Yeah. So one of the things that was really interesting to me that I actually just recently found out, which is that like, his whole idea of like him coming back from the war, that's what the first track is. So when he's like coming back in, it's like a party, like they're welcoming him back and be like, "What's happening, brother? What's you know what I mean?" They're like, "Hey, how you doing?" You know what I mean? And the whole thing is like him coming back and being like, the whole perspective is Marvin's writing from the perspective of his brother, saying like, "Man, like what's going on?" Like, I can't believe I just said what's going on, but
I think I've said it too already.
He's just like kind of experiencing like how America feels coming back from the war.
Yeah.
And that actually leads into, so the first song is like a party and they're like, "Hey, welcome him back." And he's like asking all these questions. And then
also musically, like in that first song, like the first part of the first song where they're having that party and like the saxophone comes in with that very like, just crying, like, and that juxtaposition is thank you very much. Juxtaposition. I don't even know if that was the correct.
That's it, man.
The juxtaposition of the sound of that saxophone and this like party in the background, like welcome home, like it was kind of like welcome home, but wait till you see what's here, almost,
Oh man, I didn't even look at it that way. Okay. So my actual favorite song of the album is the second one. It's called "What's Happening, Brother." What's happening, brother? Right?
Yeah.
Hey, baby.
Oh,
what you know good? I was like, oh! First time I listened, I was like, oh!
I remember there were some times in college where you'd be listening to something and I might be in the room and I might not, but you would just, if I was in the room, I would just hear, oh! And it was just like, I was like, oh my goodness,
Man, you gotta let it out, man. Like, you can't let that stay inside. You can't let that stay
Clearly
inside.
not. Yeah, it's like sneezing, like a big sneeze.
Hey, baby, what you know good? I was like, what do I know good, Marvin? I don't even know.
I don't know.
That again. Say that again. Say that again.
No, so I agree. That is probably my favorite song on the album too.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's just the way that we'll talk about like how he sings and how clear his voice is and like how distinct his like every word is just so crisp. Every word is so like perfect. Everything is in the right place.
Yeah.
But like that song is also about like his brother not being able to get a job. Like, can't get no name, can't get no job, no. Like, how's it feel as a veteran to come back to America? Also, a veteran being Black, coming back to a broken nation. So it was like my favorite song. That's why I wanted to say it. But also that sentiment kind of carries over.
This is from a Rolling Stone interview that Marvin gave, and it's kind of just a quick synopsis or like synopsis. What is it with me today in these words? I'm just I'm just
Rolling
pulling
Stones
them.
Dan, I like it. Yeah.
This
Pitchfork Dan. That's what I'm gonna start calling you, Pitchfork Dan.
Pitchfork Dan. Oh my goodness. So yeah, this interview, this quote is basically like, here's how Marvin was thinking about the whole like process of where he was at coming into this album. He says, in 1969 or 1970, I began to reevaluate my whole concept of what I wanted my music to say. I was very much affected by letters my brother was sending me from Vietnam, as well as the social situation here at home. I realized that I had to put my own fantasies behind me if I wanted to write songs that would reach the souls of people. I wanted them to take a look at what was happening in the world. So that's still, it's taken out of context. Like, it's not seeing the whole interview, but like, I can see how that informed the like theme of this album, because it was not like we said, this kind of Motown, almost fantasy land.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great music, of course, that came out of that time, like earlier in the 60s, but Yeah, that's
yeah.
I really like that quote.
So I want to pull back from the overhead view we kind of gave of the album and kind of come back down into like what was actually happening on the ground.
Yeah.
So Barry hated it, right? And so he was like, "Yo, don't do that." And then Marvin was like, "I'm gonna do it anyway." So basically, he gets one of his homies. I don't really know who his name was, but I'm just gonna say homie. He got one of his homies and was like, "Hey man, we're gonna put this thing out behind Barry Gordy's back."
Yeah. And his homie was like another executive at Motown, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know this.
I think.
I like it. Executive beef.
I think. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, so basically, from how I understood it, reading from a couple of different sources, is that guy kind of needed something. Like he was trying to, that guy had an incentive to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just like he was doing a favor. He had like an incentive to do it,
right.
for his own career in some way. So they do it. They put it out like 100,000 copies, and then it goes crazy. And they put out another 100,000 copies. Goes crazy.
Yeah.
So then Barry's like, all right, I'm going from California. Well, I don't know if he was in California, but he drives to Marvin's house. He's like, yo, man, album. I mean, I think you should make an album. Like the singles rocking. Like
basically does a complete 180. Like
yeah.
And like you said before, like I think you're right. Like Barry was about the money. Like I mean like he was the executive. Like it makes sense. But now it's like I hate it, but now it's successful. Okay, let's go all the way with it.
And he might have still hated it, but he was like, but they like it, so let's do it. Also, this is kind of outside of Motown's. Like they weren't an album. We talked about this earlier, but they weren't like an album when we were talking about Stevie in another episode. But they weren't like an album label. Like they didn't do things like that. You know what I mean?
And this I've heard this album as being described as like the concept or at least the cohesive album brought to R&B. Like
a lot of people say it's the first concept album. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would say it's a concept album.
And I would say, if it's okay, like just to mention like the album as a whole in terms of the music, like the actual like side 1, side 2 thing, like the first 6 songs. I
like it. Bring that back. We've been missing that.
That's right. Yeah. Because we got into the 80s like CD world, but now we're back into vinyl world.
From the 80s?
I think late 80s.
I thought that was a 90s thing. All right, my bad.
I can't remember. You might be right, but anyway, we're definitely not in CD land right now. So it was like side 1, side 2, vinyl records. That's what we're talking about. So the side 1 was the first 6 songs, and I mean, it really only takes one listen, and you really don't have to be a musician to notice that like it is like really kind of one thing. Like side 1 is like kind of one song almost, like
it's like a suite.
Sweet. Thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. And then side 2, you have 2 of the 3 on that side. Like there's only 3 tracks, but 2 of the 3 are longer and they connect together too. So it is for sure. And then at the end of the last song, so at the end of the very end of the album, there's a little bit of a reprise of the intro of the first song, so it's like very much a conceptual circular.
It's meant to be its own big thing. So he starts to make the album. He puts it together. He's like writing with it says that he wrote with like 6 other people, including his wife, Anna. And he got some of the Funk Brothers in there. Not all of them, but James Jamerson was part of this.
Yep.
My guy. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. James, I was just gonna say James Jamerson. Like I know he played bass on the first 5, and then they brought Bob Babbitt in. For 6 through 9.
I was actually gonna I think that there was like kind of like an estranged relationship between Jamerson and Motown, and honestly, not just them, but like a bunch of people. I was actually gonna see if I could get some clarity on that.
Yo, what's up?
Josh, this is Aaron Maston from Mandatory Listening. Hey, we got Dan on the phone here.
Hello.
Dan said,
Dan the man.
Dan the man. He said, hello. Yo, what's going on? What are you doing?
Not much. I'm at the grocery store. What are y'all doing?
Oh, we're just making a podcast, making history.
Ask him what he's getting at the store.
Y'all are making history. That's the truth.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. People are gonna look back and be like, man, they were doing big things even back then.
I was trying to tell them the listeners that are hearing this right now, they're on board. Like, they get it. And you're a visionary, so I mean, if you say that, I believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see it, man. If you think I'm a visionary, you trust that I can see it.
So, Dan wants to know what you're getting at the grocery store.
What I'm getting at the grocery store?
Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff for tacos, pico, red onion. No big deal.
Dang, you didn't have to. You didn't have to do that. Do that tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron's like, oh, I'm invited over.
Let me be extra clear. This is all for me.
Oh.
Extra clear.
For those of you who don't know, Josh and Aaron are neighbors. Like.
Okay.
What y'all doing?
Okay, so we're talking about this podcast, and Dan tells me, he's like, yo, so it looks like James Jamerson only played on like some of these records. And we're talking about not Let's Get It On. We're talking about What's Going On. And
Gotcha.
he was telling me, he was like, yeah, it looks like James Jamerson only played on like not all of the albums. So obviously Bob Babbitt came in and did some other
all the songs.
Yeah.
And I just remember that you were telling me like there was some type of rift or something like that. Like I don't know. Fill in the holes for me.
Yeah. So by that time, Motown had moved from Detroit to LA.
Yeah.
And it was like a really sticky situation because the story is that they didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Just all the musicians and singers showed up, and there was a note on the door that was like, "Sorry, everybody, we're gone." And
that's not funny, but wow.
Yeah, I know.
It's true.
And,
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the story that I've heard and read and from like multiple sources.
Goodness.
But I think there was a period in time when Jamerson went out to LA to try and like make it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But what happened was that Motown had started like the Motown tour, and so they like barely hired any of the old musicians from those records, from like all the famous ones. And from what I know, and from what I can gather, they didn't even ask them. They just like hired like whoever the hot musicians were in the area that they were like kind of shipping out of.
Yeah.
Dave
Rickle.
Yeah.
I'm just playing, Dave. It's all good, bro. Let me know. We can get together. Let's jam or something.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm calling Dave next as our next guest.
But yeah, Jamerson apparently either went to a show on the tour, or like to attend, or maybe he saw like a televised version. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
But I know the story is he had to buy a ticket, like he had to buy a scalp ticket to get in. And so he goes in and he sees all these musicians playing his music that he probably wasn't asked to do. People are getting and he was a big part of that sound, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't
for sure.
Like you listen to all that music, and nowadays, like you can hear most music is really drums driven.
Yeah.
So like the loudest thing on the low end is like kick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and you can hear the whole drum set.
Right.
Back then, it wasn't like that as much. You listen to those old records, and it's like you can hear snare and hat, and you can hear the kick, but the bass is really loud.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like,
definitely like that on this album.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is. And even Bob Babbitt like talks all the time in the few interviews that I've seen of him. He even talked about like, yeah, I was just trying to do what Jamerson was doing.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And so like he even knew like, oh, this is the sound, this is the way I need to play. And so Jamerson sees this show is super pissed, and then like wants basically nothing to do with Motown. And also, I think he was a little hurt also because he moved out to LA to try and do it, but wasn't getting the calls, wasn't getting the recognition that he definitely deserved.
Yeah.
And so then when What's Going On came around, Marvin hit him up.
Yeah.
And was like, hey, or I think the deal was he went and saw him at a club and was like, hey man, I really want you on this record. So Mark goes to see him at a show because as he's making the record, he realizes like, okay, I really need Jamerson for this thing.
Yeah.
So he goes to the show, starts talking to him, and Jamerson is like, nah, Motown, all of them, like, I'm not doing that. And then Marvin was like, dude, I really need you for this record. And Jamerson was like, fine, but I'm gonna do like whatever I want because like what are they gonna do? Like fire me? You know what I mean? Like
they already replaced me.
Exactly. Like he had nothing to lose. So that's where like the story of What's Going On, the title track, What's Going On, comes in because it's like he went into the studio. Everybody was like, yeah, man, we just need you to. This is one of the songs. Blah blah blah. Jamerson like doesn't give a about what they're trying to tell him.
Yeah.
And he lays on the ground and records it. So he's laying on the ground.
Yeah, he's like on his back.
Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of people were saying because like he was drunk, like he couldn't even he wasn't even sitting in his chair. Like he was like, let me just lay down. Let me just.
But like by that time, for real. By that time, he had a pretty big alcohol problem because I think there's like some testimonials and stuff from his family. They were like, he wasn't providing the same way.
Yeah.
Motown he had invested a lot in, and it was like a real family vibe. Like they were all abandoned, but he was one of the ones that tried to move out, but shouldn't go out. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, he really had nothing but bad feelings.
And
Motown,
and let me ask you this more of a bass question because I didn't mention that, but you're a bass player in the band Lark. Like, not only that, like you've done a lot of stuff. Do you want to give them your accolades, or you just save that for later?
I'll send you the whole sheet.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description.
Professional bassist and taco maker.
He said professional bassist and taco maker. That's what Dan said. Strike 3, you're out of there.
Hey, wait, hold on. Who made you the umpire? Man? I don't know what's going on here.
All right, so I was gonna ask you is that like, I mean, honestly, in the 50s, like the 50s is when electric bass started, right?
That's when it was popular. That's when it started to become
all right,
popular.
The theory I just put together in my head right now that has no backing at all is that like I'm sure like people didn't even like truly appreciate like how he was doing, like because he was like the innovator of the instrument. You know what I mean? Like I feel like people didn't even truly appreciate like what he was like contributing to the history of bass at the time. Like I'm sure people liked him and people were like, oh yeah, that's James, he's bad. But like when he went out to LA in like the late 60s, people were like, you're not playing upright, bro? And he's like, nah, I'm playing. I don't know. I'm just made that up in my head right now, but it seems like it's probably right.
Yeah, well, the early stuff he was playing upright on it.
Oh.
And then eventually, but I'm talking about like the earliest Motown stuff that he is credited with.
Yeah.
He was playing upright on a lot of it, and he was also playing upright on jazz gigs. And then, but I think eventually when he started to use the P bass, then that's when everybody was like, okay, I think it was just like easier to drive everything, which I think they all kind of wanted anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody knew he was special because, like, nobody was even close to doing what he was doing. Like, who was it? Let's see. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember, like, notable electric bass players from way back when. But, like, I don't even remember the years that, like, Carol Kay and even Wes Montgomery's brother who played electric.
Yeah.
He was like a notable electric player, but I can't remember what years those were. Pretty sure Jamerson was still before all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he was a big deal, and people didn't, because also at the time, electric bass was sold to guitar players. It wasn't marketed toward bass players.
Oh.
It was marketed toward guitar players who needed to play bass.
Oh,
and it's
that's
just
crazy.
like, hey,
Oh, you can get by. It's like you can. I never knew that.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't even like a bass player thing. That's why even like the first 6-string bass was a really long time ago. People act like that's a new thing, but the first 6-string bass was just a guitar tuned all the way down, like two bass tuning.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. Like Fender and those companies were just trying to find something they could sell to guitar players. So yeah, it was not a popular instrument then. It was not something that was supposed to be prolific by any means, but he just kind of found it and then like paved the way.
Dang. Bro, you kind of just laid it on us, bro. Second guess the mandatory listen. Everybody clap it up in the comments.
Wow. That was amazing.
All right, man. Well, tacos tonight, man. We'll see you.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna eat it by myself, but you guys can have tacos where you are. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for calling.
Peace, man.
Thanks, Josh. Wow, man. See, that we could have him on for a whole episode, like guest.
We should. Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Especially since he lives so close.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He could like literally be with you. Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of great insight on the bass stuff on James Jamerson. The other thing with Jamerson too is that like he went uncredited on so much stuff, as did lots of other.
Everybody.
Yeah. Like, but that has to just that and I've said this before on this podcast. Yeah. Like, I like crediting people because I want to be credited with what I do. So like,
let's do it.
It has to.
Credits? Let's do it.
But it has to eat away at you, like, just like, like I am part of the Motown sound, and I'm not credited. So I do have some credits. Okay. There's a whole lot of individual people on this.
Yeah, there's like 39. Yeah, there's like 39 musicians on this.
Yeah, because there's the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and there's members of the Lions and the Pistons, the football and basketball teams, for those of you who don't know.
Scratch off one of my 3-on-3.
My bad.
It's all good.
Yeah, that's what we should do. We should like be playing a game the whole time to like try to knock out each other's 3-on-3. And then we get to 3-on-3 and there's nothing left.
Yeah, there's nothing.
So of course Marvin Gaye not only sang, but he also played piano. He played.
He was good at it too.
Yeah, he's great at it. And he played mellotron on Mercy Mercy Me, and he played box drum / cajon on What's Going On, which of course wasn't the only like percussion on the song, but it contributed to the just utter grooviness of it. Yeah. You had two different guitar players, Joe Messina, Robert White, two different keyboards, Johnny Griffith and Earl Van Dyke.
John.
Chet Forrest on the drums.
Chet was actually called in to play drums because they wanted a specifically different sound than the usual Motown sound. They wanted a more I think it was more like a jazz sound. I think if I remember correctly, they were looking for more like something that just wasn't Motown.
Yeah, you're right. I think it was like the fact that he was like a swing drummer, like big band drummer. But I mean, it's definitely not a swing record, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
like he definitely laid down the groove. You had here's the all-stars of the album to me are the percussionists. So Chet Forrest is great, but the two Jacks, Jack Ashford and Jack Brokensha.
Jack and Jack.
Eddie Bongo Brown, which if your nickname is Bongo.
Oh my God. Eddie.
Bongo
Shout
Brown.
out to Eddie.
Earl DeRuin and Bobby Hall, who I think we've mentioned Bobby Hall maybe on the Stevie Wonder episode.
Yeah, maybe. I think
she is spelled Bobby, like Bobbye. Anyway, she's another legendary percussionist. So bye-bye. Like you said before, actually, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of the members of a lot of the musicians on this album were members of the Funk Brothers, which was generally a group of Detroit session musicians who contributed to Motown records like most of the Motown records, and often went uncredited, like James Jamerson did. And then I just said, as much as I do like crediting people, I just said there's a whole lot of strings, woodwinds, and brass. I mean, some you can find the names of the people, but
also I don't think you named the vocalist. If we're
talking
Marvin
about
Gaye? Highlight moments. If we're talking about highlight moments, there's a moment in, I think it's Flying Hot. Oh, maybe it's there's one song. It's literally one song where there's female background vocals, and they just say, like, if the word was bye-bye, they'd be like, bye-bye. And then that's it. You never hear them ever again.
Yeah, I don't think I have who that was.
It was funny though. They're just like, bye-bye. They like say whatever. He's like, bye-bye. They're like, bye-bye. And then it's over.
This is one of my 3-on-3s. I'll go ahead and say it is, I don't have her name, but she actually was just there and she was leaving. And as she was walking out the door,
she was like, bye-bye.
Like, bye-bye. And she just happened to pass by.
I saw it a mile away. I was like, I know he's not going to try to fit this in.
That's kind of the credits part of, of the pod.
Yeah. Okay. What is the highlights for you? Highlights for this album for you?
Of the whole album?
Yeah.
I really loved the conceptual part, and that I could listen to like all of side one, and it feels like, I mean, it is a short album, but it feels like it just flies by because you're just like kind of lost in the groove. And like, again, we've talked about this multiple times before. Like, I don't pay attention to the lyrics as much at first. So I'm really just picking out the vibe of it, deciding what I think about the musical components. And because I listened to it before, it doesn't really have a nostalgic thing for me, but I can remember like a few times listening to it where it just like, it's very healing, it's just like, like it just calms me down. And like I, took a shower last night and listened to it, I didn't take a 35-minute shower, but
let's just go through it. If you know anything about it or you remember anything, I'll give us the famous 3-second song, 3-second vocals for each one.
Yeah.
Starting off with what's going on. Mother. I think that's the wrong words. Brother.
I think it starts out mother, right?
Oh, that's too many of us dying. Yeah. Okay, right.
I got number 2. Number 2 is What's Happening, Brother.
Yeah, my guy James is killing on that. Hey, baby, what you know good? Hey, yeah, what do you know good? Oh, okay, so this was an interesting one, Flying High. That's actually like not a rip off, but inspired, I guess you could say.
Actually, a rip off.
Of one of the airlines had like a slogan. I think maybe it was, I don't want to guess, but one of the airlines had a slogan. It was like flying something high, and so like this is kind of like a take like off of that, and it's really just about drugs. So when I first listened to this song, I was just like, it's kind of like a very like there's like a theme about drugs in every single album that we've done so far, 70s and 80s, besides Prince. But I'm sure something was in there. But you know what I'm saying? It's pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah, and I think the 70s, well, both 70s and 80s, but 70s were like known as very drug induced time.
Yeah. So that one is about that, and it kind of feels like it too. Doom 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 doom. Like when I first heard it, I was like, oh man. Woo. And he's singing like this. Ah, baby. Boom 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 boom. It's just like, whoo.
Yep.
Then you have the song that I like the absolute least.
Well, you don't like kids?
Save the babies. Save the babies. I don't know, bro. Every time Every time that comes on, I'm like, oh, next song, please. And I'm like, nah, just listen.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know. I just don't like this song at all.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And then my second favorite song is God is Love. That one's really cool.
Yeah.
How's that go? He made this world for us to live in. That song. And all he asks of us. That,
yeah.
He kills that song. Then you have Mercy, Mercy Me.
Now this is another favorite of mine. I think there's like this very hollow, like backbeat sound. It's like almost like a, and it's just it gets me every time, and you hear it again in Inner City Blues, and maybe even one other time, but like almost that alone like puts it like in another stratosphere for me over some of the other songs. And it also like it kind of signifies that like, okay, this has been side one. It is like a suite, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's about to come to a close. Like this is like the last part of it. And also I had to look up the word ecology because I didn't know what exactly ecology was.
I never looked it up, but I think I kind of know what it is. Also, that's a joke because Berry Gordy is like there's a quote that either it might be real or it might not, because I've seen multiple sources where people are like, oh, he didn't say that, and people say that he did, and he was just like, what the F is ecology? I think doesn't it just mean like the study of how the earth works together?
I think so, like how like living organisms work together. Like
I still got it, boys. College was not for nothing.
Back to the ecology thing, like this is also like it's like a parentheses album, it's got 3 different songs that have parentheses in the title, but I don't know, I kind of like that. It's kind of like this title can't quite say everything I need to say, so just listen to the song. That's what that tells me. That's like just listen to it.
That's like that band Lark, their first album. They have a song called Heart Song, and in parentheses it has This Way. Sick, right?
Sick.
You guys should check it out. Actually, I'm gonna make it the outro.
Boom. Well, actually, I'm editing this episode.
Oh yeah. Well, you're gonna have to buy this album, download the song. Okay. The next song was Right On. I'll be honest, I don't remember it. I just know that it was really long.
Very long, and once again, beginning side 2. It's a departure from side 1. Not that it's like a whole nother style of music. It's just like
it's just
when you listen to it
up in tempo.
When you listen to it on digital or CD or anything that's not a vinyl, and you don't have to take time to flip it over and put the needle back on, you are like, oh wow, that's definitely like different from the first 6 songs.
All I remember is that is it called the Wiro?
Wiro? I can't remember if you pronounced the G. I think you pronounced the G.
Yeah. That thing is in that one.
Yeah.
It's good though. It sounds like, it reminds me of like the old soul songs in like the 50s. Okay. Yeah. Holy. It's like 3 minutes 8 seconds. Not really any drums, just mostly ting ting. And then you have Inner City Blues. Make me wanna holler. Wait, is that the word? Is it? Throw up my hands. Wait, what's it? Yeah, make me wanna holler. See, I got it. I didn't even think it.
Yeah.
It's an epic song.
Yeah, I think. What are your playlist songs off of this album?
It's gonna be What's Going On. Wait, no, I don't think I'm gonna put What's Going On in there, because like I played it so much in my life, it's kind of annoying now. Not, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of annoying. So I'm gonna put for sure What's Happening, Brother. I sounded white when I said that, brother. Then God is Love and Inner City Blues.
Nice. I would say What's Going On, What's Happening, Brother, Mercy, Mercy Me, Inner City Blues. Those are my 4. Nice. And I mean, this is a good example of an album that, like, I would probably just put the whole album on a playlist.
Yeah. It's kind of
like same thing with Songs in the Key of Life. It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to skip any of these. I know you kind of said you want to skip Save the Children, but for me, like,
Save the bed. It's just something. It's just something about when it goes into the like heavy 6/8. Save the babies. Oh, save. Man, I really enjoyed. I feel like I put a notch in my belt of listening to classic albums. Like somebody's like, yeah, you remember like God Is Love on I was like, oh yeah, track number 5 on What's Going On.
Yeah.
71. The Barry Gordy didn't want to come out, but it came out anyways because his you know what I'm saying? Like you just keep going,
Oh,
James
and
Jamerson was on his back,
Yeah. And quick thing about the Barry Gordy situation too is
no.
What?
You're gonna take my last 3?
No. This isn't a 3-on-3. I could almost guarantee it's not.
Okay.
So, or well, actually, tell me what it is so I don't do it.
No,
I don't want to.
I want to know now.
I don't want to take your other one.
No, I'll take it, man. I want to end up with no 3-on-3s. Let's do it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. So I also want to mention with the Barry Gordy situation, like part of the like thing when he came back to Marvin after the What's Going On single was successful was like, hey, let's get this album out. Like, if you can finish it in like 30 days, then like
yep, that was it.
You can. If you finish it in like 30 days, then you can like have creative control and like produce it and like all that. And so basically,
which was a big deal because nobody really had creative control back then.
Right.
Stevie had it with the album before, which was Where I Come From.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm coming from.
I think it's Where I'm Coming From. Yeah.
Yeah, Where I'm Coming From, which was 71 also. After the record was made, the label kind of like sat on it for a long time. Like, they sat on it for months, and then Gaye was just basically like, "Hey, I'm never gonna record here ever again. I'm divorcing your sister anyways, so it's like." Put it out or I'm never gonna record here again. And it's like they were like, all right, let's put it out. Which was funny after the 30 days thing, like why that would happen, Okay, so here's a quote from cbc.ca. What's Going On looked at the forces shaping American culture at the beginning of the 70s. That moment when hippie era idealism crashed into the realities of poverty, of mystifying war, drug abuse, and racial misunderstanding. Gaye didn't shout, didn't demand anything. His approach was cautious. Father, we don't need to escalate. That was a quote inside of a quote. He might have set out to deliver one of those call to action sermons he'd heard growing up, but he veiled it in the sweet butterfly anguish of his voice and all kinds of musical seductions. In the image on the rear of the album, Gaye is surrounded by a swing set and toys piled up against a wall, echoing one of the album's central songs, Save the Children. Most previous Motown album covers also featured the phrase, the sound of young America, but Gaye's album would not. The picture of Gaye surrounded by abandoned childhood toys in the rain captured the death of innocence. It was a message from Gaye to Motown. Time to grow up. Time to take a look at what's going on.
Nice. I like that. Yeah.
The interesting thing about that photo shoot on the album is that it was kind of like last minute. He was just like, all right, just come to the house. I'm going to walk outside. So they kind of like drew from like kind of like, in hindsight, they were like, oh, that because of that, and that's because of that. But
yeah, and like, what if it hadn't have been raining when they did that? Like,
right? Yeah, that's why, because he had a suit on underneath that. He threw that jacket on in the back. Obviously, his hair's grown out. Like that wasn't how he was before in the '60s. So,
yeah, he was more like kind of clean cut in the '60s, right?
Yeah. So it was
interesting, man. All right, well let's go to 3-on-3. So, do you have any 3-on-3?
I'm down to 1 3-on-3. I'm down to one.
For any of you who didn't quite follow, I basically stole 2 of his during the process of this podcast. But
good.
If you want, I'll start because I have more than one, so then we can sandwich yours in.
Now you got more than me. Got it. All right. Cool.
The first one is that in the spring of 1970, again, a lot of turmoil was going on in his life, and this was leading into this album, preceding the album. He decided that he was going to like pursue an NFL career.
Yeah.
Just like out of the blue.
And he was serious about it too.
And he was really serious. Yeah. Like he and you know, in Detroit, like it's the Detroit Lions. So like he wanted to play for the Lions. So he was working out with Eastern Michigan's football team, like the college football team.
Yeah.
And I think he got to like a tryout.
He did, yeah. He got to the tryout.
And I've heard two things. I've heard one that he just straight up got cut early and like it didn't work. I've also heard that the owner of the Lions was like, hey, like if you played for us, like you would most likely get injured and then your singing career would be like, you know, kind of ruined. So, I mean, it's hard to imagine that someone could just go in and like, even if they are trained, just essentially out of nowhere, like, okay, let's play in the NFL.
It's kind of interesting because that exact thing is happening right now.
Yeah.
You know about this?
No, go ahead.
J. Cole, the rapper.
I didn't know about this. No.
He's like training to be in the NBA, and the Detroit Pistons are like, yeah, we'll give him a tryout. Which everybody
is the Pistons?
Huh?
It's the Pistons?
The Pistons, yeah, Detroit still. It's crazy.
Whoa, yeah.
A lot of people are saying like Detroit's doing it for publicity. Like they're just like, we kind of need some.
I mean, hey, that's pretty good publicity.
J. Cole's like one of the biggest rappers in the world. So
yeah,
like, it's like a part of his rollout, I guess. I don't know, but he actually can hoop, like, you know. I
have seen videos of him hooping on Instagram, and let me be very, very clear. Like, any professional sports league is extremely hard to get into. Like extremely hard. The NFL is like for Marvin Gaye to just go straight to the NFL, even in 1970 when it wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he could have gotten like seriously injured, like, because, you know, like basketball, like you could just like miss a bunch of shots and like you could still get injured, but no one's like tackling you. Like Ray Lewis isn't coming at you. That was a horrible example. Ray Lewis wasn't a part of either of these times, but
okay.
But you know what I mean.
What was it in the 70s? Who's a linebacker in the 70s? I was about to say Brian Urlacher. I was gonna say the fridge, but that's the 80s.
Yeah, my knowledge of the 70s NFL is pretty bad.
Fran Tarkington.
Fran Tarkington. All right, let's go on to your one-on-one.
Okay, but yeah, my one-on-one is okay. This was one of the first times. This album and also Stevie's album, Where I'm Coming From, was one of the first times that lyrics were printed in the actual album.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that one. Wow.
Yeah. It's like I guess like one of the articles was saying that like Motown didn't like to do that because the lyrics were so like surface level that they were like, it's gonna look way elementary if we just print these. So just enjoy it as it's happening.
Yeah, right.
Let's do it like with everything else. With everything else, trust me, it's great.
Yeah.
But I don't really know the reason behind all of that. But
that's really interesting, though. I didn't know that.
Motown, not just labels.
And I don't even know if I've really said this on the podcast yet, but like I love when albums have lyrics in them because like that's what I remember. Like all those CDs back there that you see, like like I grew up listening to CDs and like taking the liner notes out and reading the liner notes, reading all the lyrics if they had lyrics. And not all of them did, but most of them did.
You were a young, mandatory listening chap.
That's right. Yeah. And yeah, so that's really interesting to hear that was one of the first. And honestly, earlier than I would have thought for some reason. I don't really know why. I guess I would have thought that would have happened more in like honestly, not till the 90s, but I can't really pinpoint a reason why. Probably just because I'm from the 90s. That's why.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, my last one is kind of playing off what Josh, our guest, said about James Jamerson.
Shout out to Josh, man.
Shout out to Josh. Thank you for calling in, man. Like the idea that James was like on his back and like playing these parts. And you said this too, like when he was on the call, like, you know, some people say that he was like, he was drunk also. And like, that was, he couldn't sit upright in a chair basically. So incredible that he even laid down the parts while laying down. But the other interesting thing about that is that the arranger, David Van de Pitt, he actually wrote out those bass lines for him. Like,
see, I saw that. I don't believe it.
But the thing that made me believe it is that he said that he like the reason why James Jamerson liked it is because like he liked that he did that because it was like Van de Pitt was writing out Jamerson style licks, and he was like, it was like, this is what like I think you might play, and then he came in and was either out of it for this reason or that reason, but like he was essentially reading down an arrangement, like
for the whole thing or just what's going on.
I think it was just what's going on.
Okay, that makes more sense. But like when I hear what's happening, brother, I'm like, I can't see this being written out. It's like I don't see that.
Yeah.
Like this I can see somebody writing that out, but
yeah. I mean, it was I think that I know little enough about arranging and about like string arrangements and basically just writing something for so many people, like that's a pretty specific discipline, you know, and like skill to have. So like, you know, normally, like I can't see that happening. But it kind of makes sense when you look at it from like the perspective of, Jamerson wasn't really even maybe wanting to come in and like put his full effort into it or whatever you want to say. But anyway, that was fascinating to me.
Next album, so interesting. We said we're going to tell you like the new thing that we're gonna. Well, it's not new. It's the first time we've encountered. So we've gotten to episode 11, which is the next episode, and we decided like usually we connect albums from album to album to album to album, and what that usually does is like sometimes it takes us to a whole different type of album, but sometimes I think it's like it kind of puts us in the same type of area, albums, years type thing. So although we love that, we're going to throw a wild card in there. So every 10 episodes, we're just going to do like a free-for-all. It's like, you know what? New album doesn't have to be connected at all. Let's go to a totally different world. Or we don't have to go to the world. Whoever's choosing is you know, it's their choice. You know
yeah. We're going to move to back to the 60s, 1966 to be exact.
66.
And
66.
This is another album that neither of us have listened to all the way through. I'm more familiar with the group and with like a few of the songs on the album, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But it is Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys.
Pet Sounds, another notch in the mandatory listening belt.
Yeah, and this definitely takes us in a different direction from where we've been.
Yeah.
I like what you said. I like what you said is like, you know, basically every 10 episodes we're going to have, it's going to give us the option to reset or not. So, you know, maybe we'll get to episode 20 and there's like just an obvious one for episode 21.
Yeah.
We'll do it, you know, but I think it's a good thing to do. Also, at least for me, it ties into my playlist idea of like separating them 10 at a time just for the size of the playlist. So it'll kind of like divide it up evenly. But I'm really excited for this because this is an album that I've thought about doing this for a while, like just on my own. Like I just need to listen to it, and I like still haven't. Yeah. And I can't say that about all of them yet. So I'm really interested. Also, I know this is another one where I know a lot about, or at least have heard a lot of earlier Beach Boys. Like
this is one where I have no idea. Like, are they black?
Yeah.
Are they white?
I think you know. I'm sure you could probably guess.
I know they're white, but I have no idea about anything about the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
I think there's a movie about them, but I don't know the actual name. What's the biopic?
There was a movie a few years ago called Love and Mercy. It was John Cusack and Paul Dano, and it was really interesting. It was mostly about Brian Wilson. Like, it was about the Beach Boys, but Brian Wilson was like the kind of the lead guy. Yeah. And you'll definitely hear that with Pet Sounds. So really looking forward to that. Man,
guys, listen to it with us. Listen to the Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
I want you to listen to it and wonder to yourself, why do they call it Pet Sounds? Because I have no idea. I'm interested. I don't know how they're calling it Pet Sounds.
Yeah, I don't know that actually. All right. I'm Dan. That's Aaron. And remember, it's not optional. It's mandatory.
Mandatory.
Peace.